Hello everyone, and in this lecture I will walk you through all the kubectl configmap CM commands. So first I will set the alias alias k equal to kubectl. So list all config maps in the current or the default namespace. So the command is k get cm. So this command displays a list of all config maps in your current namespace with the basic information like name and age. Use this command when you need to quickly check available config maps or as a first step in troubleshooting application configuration issues. So current namespace can be namespace that you have set via command line, or most of the time it's the default namespace. Next command, display detailed information about all config maps. So the command is k get cm -o for output wide. The -o wide flag provides more detailed output about config maps. Use this command when you need additional config map details without the verbosity of a full description. Next command, view config maps across all namespaces. So k get cm -A. So list config maps from all namespaces in the cluster. Used when troubleshooting cluster-wide configuration issues or auditing config map usage across multiple namespaces. So here this can be replaced with -n followed by namespace if you want to get config maps for a specific namespace. And remember, config maps are namespace specific resources. So they live within a namespace. So either they will live in default namespace if you don't create first, or they will live in some other specific namespace. Next command, view config maps from a specific namespace. So this is the command -n followed by the namespace. So this lists config maps from a specific namespace. Next command, create config map from literal values. So k create cm, name of the config map. In this case, it's app config, and I am saying from literal, then key followed by the value. And if you have more keys, again you have to repeat from literal. Value, key is the app debug and value is false. So this create config map named app config with two key value pairs, and use this approach when you need to quickly create a config map with a few simple configuration values directly from the command line. And this is how it will look at the backend. So we have config map, metadata, and namespace is default, and so pay attention here, data. So by default it goes into the data. This is the standard field, and inside that all your key values will be saved. Next command, create config map from a file. K create cm, name of the config map is game config, and we are saying from file followed by the file name. So it's in the current directory, or you can give the path where this file lives. This creates a config map named game config using the contents of the config.properties file, because property files are key value. The file name becomes the key. So this will be the key, and the file contents become the value. Used when you need to store larger configuration files in a config map, or in case you are doing a migration and you already have an existing properties file. This is how you can convert that into a config map. And the backend, the data will look like this. So we have the name, and you can see this is the key, and then you have a multi-line data. So property 1, property 2, value 1, value 2. So this is the key, and whatever the whole content of the file will be in a multi-line value, and this will have in turn. So your application need to correctly pass the information from here, which is slightly different from when we create from a literal. So we have data, we have key value pair straight away. Next command, create config map from a file with custom key. So k create cm game config from file, and we are saying game properties equal to config.properties. So this will create a config map with custom key name game properties. So this is the one. So we are changing the key name instead of using the file name. Otherwise it will use config.properties. Use when you want to specify a different key name than the source file name. So backend, it will be saved like this. Only difference is it's not taking the file name, it's taking the value which we have provided and the content of the file. Create config map from multiple files. So k create cm followed by the config map name from file. So we are saying config.properties and then we are repeating again from file and we are giving one more file name. Creates a config map with content from multiple configuration files where each file name becomes a key. Used when you need to combine multiple configuration values into a single config map. And this is how it will be saved. So you have metadata, everything is same, API kind, all those things. So under data, we have multi keys. So this is the key and the whole file will go here and we have one more key which is the second file name and followed by whole content of the second file. Create config map from a directory. So k create cm game config, name of the config map from file, and in this case how we specify a directory is directory name and it must end with /. Creates a config map using all files in the config directory. Each file name becomes a key in the config map. Use when you have multiple related configuration files that should be grouped together. So backend will be saved like this data and all the files which are there in that config dir is part of the data and whole content it has taken automatically. So next, create config map from environment file. So k create cm, name of the config map env config. So this is user friendly name, whatever you wish to provide, from dash, so dash from dash env dash file and .env. This creates a config map from a file containing key value pairs in the format key value. Use when you want to convert a standard .env file into a Kubernetes config map. So .env is a very specific file which we use in lot of programming languages to store all our key values like keys, API keys, all those things, and it's a hidden file. So this is how you will convert it into a config map. Next, get detailed description of a specific config map. So k describe followed by cm keyword, name of the config map. This shows detailed information about the app config map, includes all keys and values. Use when you need to inspect the complete contents and metadata of a config map. So this will give much more information like who created an event history, all those things. So get config map in YAML format. So k get cm app config -o YAML. This outputs the complete YAML definition of the app config map. Use when you need to see the full YAML structure, inspect all fields, or export a config map for backup or replication. So this is -n I'm not giving. So this is default namespace. Previous command also, which is k describe config map. So you have to add -n if you are working other than the default namespace. Get config map in JSON format. So you can do this also. So get cm app config o JSON output, and this outputs the complete JSON of the app config map. Use when you need to process config map data programmatically or with JSON tools. Delete a config map. So k straightforward, k delete cm followed by the config map name. So next, create config map with label. So k create cm app config from literal. So this we have already seen. We are giving two keys and we are -l for label, and we are providing a label to this whole config map app config. So this will have its own label. So this is how some kind of additional metadata for this app config map. So creates a config map with label app equal to front end. Use when you need to organize config maps with labels for filtering, selection, or any organizational purposes. Next, filter config maps by label. So k get cm -l app equal to front end. So this lists only config maps with label equal to app equal to front end, use when you need to find config maps associated with specific applications or components in a namespace with many config maps. The next command, create config map in specific namespace. So this I already talked about. Only thing we have to do is provide a -n flag and the namespace name. So this must exist prior. Creates a config map in the production namespace. Edit a config map. So k edit cm followed by the config map name. Opens the app config map in your default editor. So usually it will open in vi, or if you have set editor property, environment property, whatever you have set up, it will open that. So use when you need to make changes to an existing config map interactively. So once you edit and you save, it gets automatically stored or saved in the database. So extract a specific value from a config map. K get cm app config, and we are doing output, and this is JSON path output. This is not JSON path, because we are extracting a particular value and we are going to data, which is the default flag attribute for storing all the data, and we are going to this particular tag or the key app env. So data, then this is the hierarchy app env. So this extracts and outputs only the value of app env key from the config map. Use when you need to retrieve a specific configuration values for scripts or automation. Update a config map value with patch. So we use k patch, which is for updating. Then cm, what type of object we are modifying, name of the config map, -patch, and we have to give the whole JSON path like data, and we are going inside data app env, and we are setting the value equal to staging. You can do via k edit also, but this is, if you are comfortable, you can do like this as well. So updates the value of app env to staging in the app config map. This you can use when you need to modify specific values without editing the entire config map. Replace a config map with new content. So k create cm app config from literal and to literal values, dry run client YAML. This will create a YAML and replacing the whole thing. So this is a bit advanced command. So this recreates the app config map with the new values. Use when you need to completely replace an existing config map with the new content. So you can write it to a file by redirecting like a bracket, like greater than symbol and the file name, and then you can edit and replace also. But this is just doing in a one shot. But the point is, this is how you will edit, replace completely an existing config map. Next command, create pod using config map as environment variables. So k run nginx. So this is the name of the pod, which image it's using, image -- image nginx dry run client YAML. So this is a bit advanced command. So we are going into we are modifying the YAML. Once we have got it from here, we are piping it to stream editor, and we are going to s containers. We are replacing this containers value env from config map ref. So we are replacing this app config and creating the pod. So this you can do in two step also, by either like creating a YAML and then editing the YAML and then creating it, like a 3-step procedure. So this creates a pod that loads all values from app config as environment variables. Use when your application needs configuration via environment variables. Export all config maps in a namespace. So k get cm -oyaml config maps backup. So this is working on default namespace because we are not specifying -n. So we are taking all the config maps backup. So this is how you will take a backup in a one namespace. If you put after this, if you add a -A, which is all namespaces, then you can take a backup of all the config maps. So exports all config maps in the current namespace. Used for backup, migration, or replication of configurations across clusters. Watch for changes to config maps. So k get cm -- watch. This continuously monitors and displays changes to config maps in real time. Use when debugging configuration updates or monitoring configuration changes during deployments. And that's all. Thanks for watching.